So my name is Brett Berry, and about a year ago, I had an idea. The idea was to create a Svengali type pad. And I went to my good friend, Craig Filicetti, who owns ProMystic at promystic.com. And he and I work together sometimes. And I said, hey, Craig, what if I made some really high quality Svengali pads? Because he and I both have been making these things for years. We cut the pages long and short, and in a moment we'll talk about the Svengali principle and what it is. I'm assuming most of you know about Svengali principle. But I ran it by him and I said, Craig, what do you think? And he said, well, if you make some of them, I'll buy half of whatever you make. So I was like, cool, all right. So I went to a manufacturer and I said, listen, I want to make a pad. I want it to look like something you bought at Walgreens or Office Max and have some durable covers. And I want to go with long and short pages where they'll alternate long and short, and I need them cut to within, like 1/16 of an inch. The manufacturer said, okay, why do you want to do that? Well, I explained to him what it was. And a few days later, he came back, and in my hands, I had the world's first precision SvenPad. The name came to me right away, Svengali pad, and it worked amazingly well. Not only did he cut it to 1/16 of an inch, it was actually cut to within 1/45 of an inch, which is insane. I showed them to my friend Craig. I went to his workshop and showed him a bunch of them, and his eyes popped out and his eyebrows went up. He said, wow, I'll take those and make me a few more. And that was really the birth of the SvenPad. And that was back in probably around July or August of 2015. And fast forward, I decided to make a bunch of them. And Craig said to me, who's kind of a mentor, he said, Brett, if you make these, people will buy them. He said, matter of fact, everybody will buy them. I said, really, you think so? He says, absolutely. So I decided to make about $1,000 worth of SvenPads. They were the original white ones, just as you see here, the pocket size. And we thought of some little things. These were ideas that I had, putting a label on the back, Office Max barcode, just so that the performer would know the front and back orientation of the pad. I made about $1,000 worth of them, and I brought them to Mindvention. And also I was taking classes at the McBride Mystery School at the time. So I showed these to the people in the McBride School. I also showed these to the people that I met at Mindvention. Many well-known performers and mentalists were there. Lior Suchard was there, and on and on and on. There was many people there. And everybody I pretty much showed them to said, wow, I'll buy those. Where can I get them? So I only had a small number with me, sold them out, and that is really kind of the history of the SvenPad. And November of 2015, I put up my website and at svenpads.com, and that was really the beginning of the SvenPad. So since then, the SvenPad has become literally a phenomenon. It's become the go-to. They are cut same as original to within 1/45 of an inch. The pages, as you know with Svengali principle, flip 2 at a time, and yet it's totally imperceptible. And we've come up with many different versions. The key with each version is that it can be totally customized. Doesn't matter what language, doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter what routine you're thinking about. These basically are a reflection of the entertainer or performer's creativity, which is what I'm really proud of. Let's talk briefly about the history of the Svengali principle. I got some help from Max Maven. I want to thank him for helping me with the history. There was a lot of information I was able to get, but Max added a lot. The Svengali principle actually goes back to the year 1550, quite a long time ago, to what is known as the Blow books, B-L-O-W. Those were books that were created by performers and magicians jesters, whoever back then in the mid-1500s, that would allow the performer to force information on the spectator. And believe it or not, the Svengali principle, which has come out in many different ways over hundreds of years, was really one of the oldest ideas in all of magic. Back in the early 1900s, Burling Hull, Hull, who created many different magic concepts and magic products, tried to patent the idea of a Svengali deck and was turned down by the patent office. But he did come up with some variations on the principle, which we now know Svengali decks since the year 1900 has become a very popular item in magic stores, but it's still a very deceptive principle. The beauty of the Svengali principle, I think, from my standpoint, is that it allows the perfect hands-off force for the performer. There are lots of forces available for mentalists and magicians. We all use those forces. We could use a force bag. We can use all kinds of things to force what we want on a spectator. But when it's a hands-off method, to me that is a perfect method because the spectator believes in their mind that they had control over the choice. And I think that's the real power of the SvenPads and the real power of what you have in your hands right now. Before we get into making your own SvenPad and some of the details here, I just want to literally thank the thousands of customers and performers all over the world who have bought the SvenPads and who've embraced them. We knew that there were going to be some copies and knockoffs that were going to come out, and sure enough, in the past few months, there are some knockoffs and copies. There's nothing that I could do about it because the Svengali principle is something that's been around for hundreds of years. We do not claim to own that idea. I do not claim to own it. It's out there. I do believe that the SvenPad is the best and highest quality version of the Svengali principle that has ever been created. And I do believe that in 10 years, 20 years, or 50 years, the SvenPads will still be the go-to product that all of you and performers all over the world know and trust to give them 100% perfect force. Let's talk for a moment about filling out your pad. Some of you may be new to the SvenPads. I want to thank you for purchasing it. We're going to talk about the various styles, and I want to start out with the original pocket size because everything that applies to this pad pretty much applies to any of the SvenPads we're going to talk about. The first thing you want to do is think about what do you want to force. Each of the SvenPads comes with 50 pages. There are 25 force pages, which are the short pages, and there are 25 long pages. So as I flip through the book here, we start from the front, and you show this to a spectator. I've just flipped 2 pages. The first page is a long page at the front of the book, and the way you know the front of the book, of course, is your barcode with most SvenPads is going to be on the back side. There are a few differences with some other SvenPads, but let's just talk now about the pocket size and most of them. The first page that you see is going to be a long page. The second page is going to be a short page. They alternate from there going all the way back. The very last page of your book ends with a short page. Again, it's cut 1/45 of an inch. When you get the SvenPad, you can be sure that it has been hand tested by someone on my staff or myself. Every single pad is tested before it lands in your mailbox, before you got it, or in your favorite retail store. Long and short pages alternate. What I would say though is you need to think about what you want to force. So what I usually do is, for example, if I wanted to force a destination, maybe I want to force Hawaii as a destination, I'll write that down on a blank notepad just so I've got my organization. Then I'll come up with 25 non-force destinations. So I might think of Peru or Paris or maybe the Caribbean. I'm going to write those down as my non-force items just so I'm organized. So make your list, write them down, And that's really where you should start. Because I know people, when they get these pads, they're not inexpensive. You don't want to mess your pad up. So get organized first. Write down your one force and then write down your 25 non-force things that you want to force. Now, with that in mind, I do recommend that you start writing out your pads using the recommended Pentel gel pen. Now, you can use any gel ink pen that you want. There are other pens that will work very nicely. We'll talk about that in a moment. I have found that the Pentel 1.0 millimeter pen, which I sell on my site and many of the dealers also sell, is really kind of an ideal pen. It dries quickly, which is the nature of a gel ink pen. It does not smear, and most importantly, it does not bleed through the pages. Speaking of bleeding, let me show you the very first SvenPad, I still have it, that I ever made. I keep this here just for posterity. This is SvenPad number 1. Worked well. I used a Sharpie because I didn't know better. The problem with a Sharpie is that it is an oil-based ink, and so it is going to bleed. And as I flip through here, you will see the bleeding through the pages, which is not the end of the world, but to me, it's not really the ideal. Because as I'm flipping through, you can see, if anybody was to pay attention, they would see that the force is Marilyn Monroe. This is a book of 50 famous movie stars. By the way, I think it's nice for your SvenPads to write down on the outside, either in handwriting or with a label. I've got a label printer, what the pad actually is. This way it helps keep me organized when I'm performing. Sometimes I have 2, 3, 4 SvenPads in my pockets or in my carry case while I'm out performing. But again, back to the pen, you really don't want to be using a Sharpie because again, you can see the bleed through, and if you look, you can really see that each page here says Marilyn Monroe. So I recommend any brand of gel ink pen. Whatever country you're in, you're probably going to easily find a gel ink pen. I like this particular one because it's 1.0 millimeter. Now, that being said, there are other writing devices that work very well. Pencil works real nice. Get a number 2 pencil or whatever pencil you want, and a pencil will work fine. Here's an example using one of the Post-it versions, a SvenNote. We call the SvenNote notepad. Pencil is fine. Works great, and again, you can barely see through it. Or, see here, here's a difference here. This is using the Pentel gel pen. These are 50 dream destinations. And again, when I open it, you can see that it's going to be much more deceptive. You don't get the bleed through. And that's really what you're trying, I think, to aim for, is less bleed through. You can use Crayola markers, the ones that kids use. Someone on our website at our Facebook page actually suggested yesterday the Crayola colored markers work nicely. The reason they work well is it's a water-based ink. So any water-based marker can work well. I would say experiment if you want to, but obviously these are expensive pads, so you may want to just go with what we recommend. I will say though, the Crayola markers, at least available in the USA, work fine, the water-based, the cheap ones. Also, there are some Montana brand acrylic water-based markers that Apollo Robbins was nice enough to suggest a few weeks ago. Those are excellent markers. They've got a nice big tip, and I think that the bigger markers are also very nice for the stage size version of the SvenPad. Obviously, you want something that's going to show up real big, so if you need a bigger marker, perhaps one of the Crayola markers or the Montana acrylic water-based black marker might be a nice solution for you. If anyone ever has any questions about what marker or which marker to use, please feel free to email me. I answer all of my emails. I am crazy about customer service. I am personally here for any one of you. I will try to answer your question. You can email me, Brett, B-R-E-T-T, at phoenixmentalist.com, and I'm always here to try and answer your questions, and I'll try and do that quickly. Let me see what else. Let's start out with, again, filling out your pad. What you're gonna wanna do is, let me get one here that's filled out already. I recommend filling out the pad with your non-force pages first, all right? So you've made a list of 25 non-force items. one force item that you need, and then once that's done, you're ready to start filling out your pad. Get your pen out, and again, I recommend starting with your non-force pages, which are long pages, or pages number 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. They're going to be the odd pages until you get to the last page. So those are or the next to last page. Those are going to be your non-forces. And what I do typically is I will fill out a non-force page, flip using my thumb here, and we'll talk about the technique in a moment. Flip here, and then once I flipped, I'm on another non-force page, and I flipped, I'm on another non-force page. And again, you're just filling out non-force pages into the very end. I do recommend checking your work. Take your time. There's no rush filling out your SvenPad. It will take you typically, once you get going, it'll probably take you about 15 minutes to fill out your SvenPad. The beauty of these pads is, for example, for a trade show, or if you had an important VIP client, or maybe you're just meeting a client for the first time and you want to impress them, you could take 25 of the client's best features taken off their website and put those on the non-force pages, and then put one important feature on a force page. You could fill it out right before you see the client and then use that SvenPad for the client or at your trade show very, very easily. But again, filling this out, just start filling out your non-force pages first, which are the odd pages, which are the long pages. And once you get to the very end, after checking your work every so often, just maybe stop yourself and check your work. Then you're gonna go back and you're gonna start filling out your force pages, which are the even number or short pages, starting with 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, etc. The way I do that is I'll go to the front of my pad, I'll flip up, and the force here on this pad is Cuba. So I write Cuba here, I then flip once, and the second time, flip past the non-force page, you'll hit a blank page because you're filling it out, and you're gonna write down Cuba again, and you continue right to the end till you get to the 50th page. Take your time, check your work, there's no rush, especially when you're filling out your first or second SvenPad. Best thing is to take it slow and refer, and as I go through, by the way, my non-force items, I just cross them out as I'm going through them so I don't accidentally repeat them on the non-force pages, all right? So that's filling out your pad. It's not a hard process. You fill the pads out the same way on all of the various pads. Let's talk about the various pads that are available now. So we've got the original pocket size. We've got the SvenPad Mini, which have a leatherette style cover. This is a little bit more durable. It's a heavier cover. Has the same Office Max barcode label on the back. And as you can see, these are nice because being quite a bit smaller, it's about 35% smaller than the pocket size. The beauty here is you could put these in your pocket. You could put 3 or 4 of these in your pockets and you'd have different forces all night long. So this is real nice to have, carry around for strolling. I think the mini size is perfect for strolling, and so is the pocket size for that matter. So this is great. It also has the most durable cover, so it's gonna be tough. These should last you a long time. These fill out exactly the same way as the other SvenPads. We also have the triple banks. This was an idea by Christopher Taylor. I wanna thank him very much, from Taylor Imagineering. A lot of my best ideas for the SvenPads have come from my customers, and this was certainly one example. He said, Brett, what if you had something where you had 3 different colors, and you could even do a confabulation? Great idea. So the idea was born. This is called the SvenPad Triple Bank. It has 120 pages. The colors are in banks of 40 each, so you have 40 pink, 40 bright yellow, which is called Liftoff Lemon. These are Astra Bright colors, and then you get the blue. And what's nice is you can do a confabulation routine. You can force a dream destination on maybe a gal that you bring up on stage. You tell her you've got 40 or 50 dream destinations, And again, these flip exactly the same way as the other SvenPads. You can misquote the number of pages here. Nobody's gonna be able to know. So you could say, I've got 50 pages or 60 pages on the pink. Flip through them. You can show that they're all different. What I typically do is show the fact that they're different to the spectators before I actually force them. So I'll say, all right, so we've got, 50 or 60 dream destinations here, and I just name some of them. And I don't think you need to name them all. I think you flip a few extra. And a good way to use the pad, by the way, this is a perfect example, is you really don't want to be doing this. All right, so this is gonna look like the kids' coloring book you used to do at magic shows when you were 12 years old. You don't want people to get that impression. So what Eugene Berger, in all of his wisdom, showed me way back a year ago was open your pad up like a book, like this. I'm right-handed, so if you're left-handed, you'll obviously do this differently, but open it like a book, and you can show open, 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 open. They're all different. Of course, with the triple bank, you can hand this to 3 different people. Dream destination, perhaps, on the pink, maybe dream food on the yellow with 50 or 60 different foods, and on the blue, you might have a celebrity, favorite male or female celebrity, and lots of different celebrities. You have this in your pocket. You basically have a complete confabulation routine in your pocket, and then put it away and you're done. I know that some performers are using this as a tossed out deck style routine. Great idea. I'm not gonna name names, but I know that a number of well-known people are taking this and literally tossing it into the audience like it doesn't matter, which is a great way to handle the pads because these pads should feel and look completely meaningless to you. So they throw this into the audience, no rubber bands needed, explain what to do. Perhaps on stage, you by example show, all right, I want you to open up and look at the pink, and you open up and look at the yellow, and you open up and look at the blue. Put your hands on top like the Bible. I usually tell people to put their hand out like this, put your right hand on top, take a look, and only look at one thing. This brings up another good subject, which is how do you avoid people looking at too many things? Again, this is good audience management. So you show by doing. By example, you show them how you want to hold the pad, how you want them to just take a quick peek and look at one thing, and then you hand it to them. Watch your angles, which is what I usually do. On stage, you obviously don't have to worry about that, but if you're strolling, take a look left and right at your angles, and then just take a quick peek, then hand it to them and show them what to do. If you're doing this for confabulation, I would recommend on stage at least showing once how to take a look. And you do want to say that I don't want you to see too many images. You don't want to be flipping through the book like this. I just want you to open it and take a quick look at one thing, please. That's really all you need to say. Bob Cassidy, in the instructions which you get with the SvenPads, also mentions that you don't want people to get too many images, so you just say, don't flip through the book. I don't want you to get too many images. It's gonna be very confusing. Just open, take a quick peek, don't let anyone near you see it, and then hand it to the next person if you're doing confabulation with the triple bank, or if it's just with one of the regular SvenPads, just take a quick look, they give it back to you, you put it away, and you're done. It's meaningless. So, this is the triple bank. Some of the other versions we have are the Sven notes, which are obviously post-it notes. This one's missing its brown cover on the back. Here's a brand new one. The Sven notes look exactly like the post-it notepads that we're all very familiar with. They are glued at the top, just like all of the SvenPads, except for the SvenPad code, which we'll talk about in a moment. The nice thing with these is that everybody's familiar with them. They're never going to be suspect at all when you go out and perform. I like to handle the Sven notes a little bit differently than the other pads. I think that the most natural handling with the Sven notes is to show that they're all different, which you would do with any of the SvenPads. Different. Here, let's grab one that is, this was filled out for a show I did for Clorox. So this, for example, might say KC Masterpiece, and these are all products that Clorox makes. Greenworks, Hidden Valley Ranch, Formula 409, Tilex, all the various things Clorox makes. And then what I'll say is, I'm gonna just put this out. I want you to open it and just look at one thing, all right? So I'll hold it out in betwixt my fingers. My thumb is on top, my 2 fingers are on the bottom. I'll hold it out, I'll look away, and then I'll ask them to open it and take a look at one. So this is basically the move that they're gonna make. They're gonna look at one and they're going to get the force. On this case, it's Brita, which is one of the water filters they make. So again, the handling, I think with the Sven Notes, best thing is to put it in betwixt your fingers, just like this. Hold your hands outstretched, let them look at one, they got it, good. Throw the pad away, it's meaningless. So that's the Sven Notes. These are wonderful. The only disadvantage with the Sven Notes, which I'll tell you is, these are gonna get a little bit beat up in your pockets. There's nothing I can do about it. By the way, there is no adhesive, just similar to a Post-it notepad, but all other aspects of the pad look the same, and your spectator will never know that this is not a Post-it notepad. I do think, though, it's nice to maybe carry this in something to protect it. You might be able to go to the dollar store. I bought these little cases on Amazon. And if anybody is wondering about where to get these, feel free to email me. I don't sell these, but they're easy to find. You usually have to buy them in a set of about 10 or 12 of them, and they protect your Sven Notes very nicely. If not, put them in a pocket and just realize they're gonna get a little bit beat up just because there's nothing protecting them. Let's talk about the other SvenPads quickly. We've also got what I would say are the most amazing pads so far, the SvenPad Code. These just came out recently, and I think that these are probably the most deceptive SvenPads that we've ever come out with. They have a spiral binding. The spiral binding is actually not holding the pad together, but it is protective of the glued binding. And the pages here are, for the first time in a SvenPad, line pages, college ruled paper. So it flips just like any SvenPad very, very easily. And for all practical purposes, it appears that the pad is being held together by the binding, by the spiral binding, but it's not. So that's just an optical illusion. It is glued here, but the spiral binding is protecting that real nice glued binding. And I think that the SvenPad Code just handles so well. The covers are free, so there's no glue here, they're free moving. The difference in handling here with one of these SvenPad Codes, let me get one that's already filled out, is I take it out, I flip back the cover, and I show that we have a whole bunch of different things that might remind you of your childhood. This is what this particular force is. So we've got the Cracker Jacks, we've got the first dog, you've got Hostess Twinkies, cold popsicle, spin the bottle, that's a fun one. Lots of things. And I then show them, put it flat in your hand. I want you to take a quick look at one thing, and I'll take a look myself, watching my angles. I will then hand it to them, make sure they take the pad correctly. Sometimes people are a little bit nervous, especially on stage. So if you see them grabbing it from you, slow things down just slightly and say, you know what, just take a breather for a sec. Just put it in your hand, flat like this, like the Bible, and show them one more time, and then hand it to them. I found that sometimes you need to slow people down just ever so slightly, and you can tell by the way that you're handing the pad to someone whether they're gonna follow your instructions or not. Because again, the last thing you want to happen is for them to flip through the book like this and to see that all of the pages are essentially the same. That's not what you want to happen. To avoid that, again, just show, and then you should be fine. So that's the SvenPad Code. The handling here is pretty much the same, except you're just gonna flip that first cover back before you force. That's the only difference. Something else I haven't mentioned yet is that a few of the pads work a little bit better if they're broken in. I would say the SvenPad Code and also the SvenPad Mini would be the two that need just a teeny little bit of breaking in to work at best performance. What I mean by breaking in is when you first get the pad, I'd recommend opening the pad up at each 2-page flip and then pulling it all the way back 180 degrees so that the pad is all the way open. And by doing this, it's going to just break the binding in slightly so that it flips a little bit easier, because as you can see when I'm flipping this right now and showing the pages, and you can see I'm opening it almost like a book, it's very, very deceptive, and there's no problem in taking the binding back to 180 degrees like this. You do not want to take it further than 180 degrees. This would be the maximum for the SvenPad Code. You would not want to exceed this or you will damage your binding. The same thing here with the black SvenPad Minis. When I get these, I recommend before even filling them out, just flip them in 2-page increments, open all the way, and this is going to break the binding in slightly so the pages will flip a little bit nicer. It's very durable. The pad can handle this, so it's not a problem. One more idea I want to share with you. This was an idea that was suggested by Oz Perlman. You might have seen this on his performance at America's Got Talent. You can put 2 bits of information or more on each force page. It's a very powerful idea. I think the average person who gets one of these SvenPads might think, oh, I can only put one thing on each page. No, not really. For example, on this particular SvenNote pad, I've got the names of celebrities. You've got George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Bill Murray, Tom Cruise, Harrison Ford, all the various male celebrities. When I hand this over to do the force here is actually, we'll get a close-up on this in a sec, it's actually Chewbacca. I did this for a company, it was something fun. Chewbacca, and then in parentheses, Star Wars. So the parentheses is basically something that your spectator who gets forced will see and absorb, but the audience is unaware of it. From the audience's standpoint, it's simply a book that's filled out with the names of various male celebrities. So the audience has no idea that there's a second bit of information that the spectator is getting forced, which would in this case be Chewbacca and then Star Wars. So when you do your reveal, you can not only reveal some things about Chewbacca, I'm seeing this is a male, he's a little bit older, big celebrity, hasn't had a shave in a while, you could have some fun things. But then you could reveal the movie that this person has done or whatever. And for example, one of these books I filled out, a SvenPad book, the force was Brad Pitt, and then in parentheses I had Ocean's 11. And you can reveal 2 different things. It's kind of a dual reality concept, and I think it's a very powerful possibility with these SvenPads. The stage size we haven't talked about, but it works exactly the same as the other SvenPads. The labels on the back, the pages are on the Sven pages are exactly the same. Obviously, when you fill the pad out, by the way, we didn't talk about this before, I recommend filling the pad out from about the middle of the page going down. You don't really want to write up at the top, and I would say that applies to any of the SvenPads. So if you were filling one of the minis out, I would not necessarily be writing here at the top. I would be writing from this point going down, fill the space up nicely. That's really the way to go with it. What else? You can use the SvenPad to force drawings if you want to. Got a bunch of drawings here. If you want to do a drawing duplication, you can force objects. You can use them for pre-show if you want to. A lot of entertainers have found that this is a fantastic tool for pre-show. You can use them for Q&A if you know what that is. There are just an infinite number of things you can do with the SvenPads. I think we've covered just about everything here today. Your instructions that you got and the PDF includes lots of ideas and also the Bob Cassidy scary movie routine. There's also lots and lots of ideas on our Facebook page. I can tell you that some of the top pros in the world are on the Facebook page, and they've shared lots and lots of ideas, plus PDFs. And I want to also thank Michael Murray, who contributed an incredible PDF of routines and ideas right at the very beginning of this project. So thanks to him. So feel free to join our Facebook page. You have to send a request. Just look for the Facebook SvenPad Supreme private page, and I will let you in if you make that request. I think that's about all. I want to thank all of you for buying your SvenPads. We've got many, many more ideas coming up, and the SvenPads have become the #1 forcing tool in the world, and the main reason is because of you. My name is Brett Berry. Thank you so much.